Black woman helped. The same man every day. What he said next changed everything. A kind librarian helps the same confused man every single morning. A man who can't remember his own name or why he keeps coming back to her. But one day he grabs her wrist and whispers something that shatters her world. He says someone erased him, and that she is the only reason his memories are coming back. Suddenly, the quiet library becomes the center of a dangerous secret. Because the man she's been helping? He wasn't lost by accident. He was hunted. And the people who tried to erase him now know exactly who is bringing him back, as threats close in and the truth about his past turns darker than she ever imagined. She has to choose. Walk away to save herself or stay and save him. But what happens when the only person who can restore his memory becomes the next target to disappear? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Riverside Public Library, casting warm patches of light across the worn wooden floors. Amara Hill adjusted her name badge and smiled as she watched Mrs. Chen, one of her favorite elderly patrons, slowly make her way to the large print section with her walker. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen. Would you like me to grab that new romance novel you've been waiting for?" Amara called out softly, already moving toward the hold shelf. Mrs. Chen's face lit up. "Oh dear, Amara, you always remember the little things. My old mind isn't what it used to be." "Nonsense," Amara replied, retrieving the book with practiced ease. "Your mind is sharp as ever. You remembered every detail of that mystery novel you told me about last week." As she helped Mrs. Chen get settled in her favorite armchair, Amara checked her watch. 9:15. Right on schedule, the heavy front doors swung open and a tall figure stepped inside, blinking against the change in light. Luke Lawson, or Saint, as his library card read, moved cautiously through the entrance, his broad shoulders hunched slightly as if trying to appear smaller. Despite his intimidating size and the faded leather jacket that had seen better days, his expression was soft, uncertain. Like every morning for the past 3 months, he approached the front desk with careful steps. Amara's heart squeezed with familiar sympathy as she watched him fumble in his pocket for the battered library card. The edges were worn smooth from his constant handling, yet his face showed no recognition of having used it before. "Good morning," he said quietly, placing the card on the desk. I found this in my pocket. I'm not sure if it's still good, but of course it's good, Mr. Lawson," Amara assured him with the same gentle patience she'd shown every day. "Would you like to do some reading this morning?" Relief washed over his features. "Yes, please, if that's allowed." "Always allowed," she said warmly, coming around the desk. "Let's find you a comfortable spot." She led him to what had become his usual table, positioned perfectly between 2 sunny windows. As they walked, she noticed how other patrons glanced their way, some with curiosity, others with unease at Luke's imposing presence. But Amara saw past his rough exterior to the lost soul beneath. "I brought something special today," she said, retrieving a simplified American history book from behind the desk. "I thought you might enjoy this one." Luke ran his fingers carefully over the cover, tracing the outline of the Liberty Bell. "Thank you," he murmured. "You're very kind. I'm sorry, but have we met before?" The question came every day, and every day it hurt just a little. "Yes, we have," Amara answered gently. "But that's okay if you don't remember. Let's start with something easy." She opened the book to a chapter about the colonial period, noting how Luke leaned forward with interest despite his confusion. Over the past months, she'd noticed small improvements, the way he could focus longer, how he sometimes finished sentences in familiar passages before she read them. Would you like to try writing your name? She suggested after they'd read several pages together. She pulled out a notebook and pen from her cardigan pocket, the same ones she kept ready every day for this purpose. Luke took the pen with uncertain fingers, his large hand dwarfing the writing instrument. His brow furrowed in concentration as he pressed the tip to paper. The L came slowly, shaky, but recognizable. But as he tried to continue, his hand trembled more noticeably. I can't, he whispered, frustration evident in his voice. The pen slipped from his grasp, rolling across the table. I'm sorry. I'm letting you down. Hey now, Amara said softly, retrieving the pen. You're not letting anyone down. Writing is hard work, and you're making progress every day. She watched his shoulders relax slightly at her words, though shame still lingered in his eyes. They continued reading together until closing time, Amara occasionally glancing up to check on her other patrons while maintaining the comfortable routine she'd established with Luke. As the afternoon light began to fade, Amara started her usual closing procedures. She found Luke still at his table, staring at his attempted signature with a lost expression. Time to head out, Mr. Lawson, she said kindly. Let me walk you to the door. He stood carefully, making sure to push in his chair and close the book with deliberate gentleness. Thank you for your help today. I'm sorry I take up so much of your time. You never need to apologize for seeking knowledge, Amara replied, leading him toward the exit. At the doors, she paused. Do you remember how to get back to the shelter? Luke nodded slowly. 3 blocks down. Turn right at the big church, then 2 more blocks. The building with the blue awning. That's exactly right, she encouraged, pleased he'd retained this information at least. And they're expecting you for dinner? Yes, they serve at 6 o'clock, he confirmed, though his voice held a note of uncertainty, as if questioning whether he'd remembered correctly. Amara watched as Luke made his way down the library steps, his tall frame moving with careful, measured steps. The setting sun caught his graying temples, casting long shadows behind him as he walked toward the shelter. She stood at the doors until he reached the corner, making sure he made the correct turn. Tomorrow he would be back, she knew, or thought she knew. He would present his worn library card with the same confusion, ask if they'd met before with the same politeness, and they would read together again. It was a pattern as reliable as the sunrise, this daily dance of reintroduction and patience. What Amara didn't know, couldn't know, was that tomorrow would break this careful routine for the first time in 3 months. But for now, she simply watched him disappear into the golden evening light, her heart heavy with the familiar mix of concern and hope that had become as much a part of her daily routine as shelving books and helping patrons. Inside, she began her closing duties, straightening chairs and collecting abandoned books, while her mind stayed with the gentle giant who couldn't remember his own story. Mrs. Chen caught her eye as she gathered her things to leave. That poor man, the elderly woman commented softly. You have such patience with him, dear. Amara smiled, thinking of her mother's words from long ago. Kindness costs nothing but means everything. She'd lived by that motto since losing her mother last year, finding that helping others somehow helped heal her own grief. Everyone deserves patience, Mrs. Chen, she replied, helping the older woman with her coat. Everyone deserves a chance to find their way back to themselves. As she finally locked the library doors for the night, Amara thought about Luke's attempted signature, tucked safely in her notebook. Though he couldn't remember from day to day, she kept each attempt, a private record of his small steps forward. Tomorrow would bring another day, another chance, another gentle beginning. Or so she thought, not knowing how different tomorrow would prove to be. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Amara arrived at the library. She loved these quiet moments before opening, arranging displays and preparing for the day ahead. But as she approached the entrance, she noticed a familiar figure huddled by the doors. "Mr. Lawson?" she called out softly, quickening her pace. Luke sat on the concrete steps, his large frame curled inward, hands pressed against his temples. At the sound of her voice, he looked up, and Amara's heart clenched. His face was pale, eyes squinting against what seemed to be pain, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool morning air. I don't know why I came so early," he managed, voice strained. "Everything hurts. My head, it's like pictures trying to break through." Amara quickly unlocked the library doors. "Come inside with me," she said, keeping her voice gentle and steady despite her growing concern. "We'll find you a quiet spot until you feel better." She guided him to a secluded corner in the reference section, where soft chairs nestled between tall shelves offered privacy and comfort. Luke sank into one of the chairs, his breathing labored. "Would you like some water?" Amara asked, crouching beside him. "Please," he whispered, eyes shut tight against whatever storm raged in his mind. When she returned with the water, Luke's condition had visibly worsened. His hands trembled as he accepted the glass, and his face had taken on an ashen quality that made Amara's worry spike. "Mr. Lawson, should I call someone? A doctor, perhaps?" He shook his head slightly, then winced at the movement. "Just stay. Your voice, it helps somehow." Amara pulled up a chair beside him and began speaking in low, soothing tones about nothing in particular: the weather, the new books they'd received, the morning light filtering through the windows. She hoped to anchor him with the familiar cadence of her voice. Suddenly, Luke's hand shot out and gripped her wrist. His eyes flew open, startlingly clear and focused, so different from their usual confused haziness. "They erased me," he whispered urgently, "but you brought me back." Amara froze, her pulse quickening beneath his grip. Before she could respond, his eyes rolled back, and his body went slack. The water glass slipped from his other hand, shattering on the floor. "Help!" Amara called out, her voice echoing through the empty library. "Somebody call 911!" The next hour passed in a blur. The paramedics arrived quickly, their efficient movements and professional calm a stark contrast to Amara's racing thoughts. When they asked if anyone should ride with him, Amara didn't hesitate. She quickly arranged coverage for her shift and climbed into the ambulance, her eyes never leaving Luke's unconscious form. At the hospital, Amara paced the waiting room until a doctor finally emerged to speak with her. Dr. Sarah Chen, according to her name tag, had kind eyes that reminded Amara of her mother. "Ms. Hill," the doctor began, consulting her clipboard, "you're Mr. Lawson's regular librarian?" "Yes, for the past 3 months. He comes in every day, but—" Amara hesitated, then continued. "He never remembers me from one day to the next?" Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "What we're seeing is fascinating, actually. Mr. Lawson's brain scans show increased activity in areas associated with memory formation and recall. It seems his amnesia is beginning to break down, but in unpredictable flashes rather than a gradual return." Is that normal?" Amara asked. "In cases of traumatic amnesia, there's no real normal," Dr. Chen explained. "But what's particularly interesting is that you seem to be a trigger for these memories. You mentioned he visits you daily. Even though he doesn't remember you consciously, his brain has clearly formed a strong association with your presence, your voice, your manner. They appear to be acting as a sort of stabilizing influence." Amara absorbed this information, thinking about Luke's words before he collapsed. "They erased me," he had said. Something about those words sent a chill down her spine. "Can I see him?" she asked. Dr. Chen led her to Luke's room. He lay still on the hospital bed, making the room seem small with his presence. As they entered, his eyes fluttered open. "Amara?" he whispered. She rushed to his bedside, tears pricking at her eyes. It was the first time he'd ever said her name. "Yes, I'm here, Mr. Lawson." "Luke," he corrected softly. "Please, call me Luke." His voice was weak but clearer than it had been earlier. "I'm sorry if I scared you." "Don't apologize," she said, echoing their usual exchange but with new meaning. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been asleep for a very long time," he responded, his eyes meeting hers with unprecedented focus. "But your voice, it feels like home, like something I can trust even when everything else is darkness." Amara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away, trying to maintain her composure. "That's good," she managed. "That's really good, Luke." Dr. Chen, who had been observing from the doorway, made some notes on her clipboard. "This is exceptional progress, Mr. Lawson. We'd like to keep you overnight for observation, but these are very promising signs." Luke's hand found Amara's, his grip gentle but secure. "Will you come back tomorrow?" he asked, and for the first time, there was real fear in his voice. Not the vague confusion of before, but the specific fear of losing this newfound connection. "Of course I will," Amara assured him, though she couldn't quite suppress the shiver of unease that ran through her at his earlier words about being erased. Something about this situation felt bigger than their quiet library routine, more dangerous than she'd imagined. But looking at Luke's face, seeing the trust and hope there, she knew she couldn't walk away. Whatever was happening, whatever memories were surfacing, she would be there to help him through it. "I'll be here first thing in the morning," she promised, squeezing his hand gently. Luke's eyes were already growing heavy with exhaustion, but he managed a small smile. "Thank you," he murmured, "for bringing me back." Amara sat with him until he drifted off to sleep, watching his face smooth out in peaceful rest, while beneath her compassion, questions and concerns stirred like leaves in an approaching storm. The morning sun cast long shadows across the library's stone steps as Amara approached, her mind still processing yesterday's events at the hospital. She stopped short when she saw Luke already waiting outside, sitting on the top step with a brand-new spiral notebook in his hands. He looked up at her footsteps, and her heart skipped. There was recognition in his eyes. "Good morning, Amara," he said softly, standing to his full height. "I hope it's okay that I came early. I wanted to catch you before your shift." "You remember me?" she breathed, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Luke nodded, holding up the notebook. "I bought this last night. I thought, maybe we could write down the things you help me remember. That way, even if I forget again, I'll have something to hold on to." Amara felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. "That's a wonderful idea, Luke. Come on in. We can sit at your usual table." She unlocked the heavy doors, leading him to the quiet reading area where they'd spent so many mornings together. The familiar space felt different now, charged with possibility rather than the gentle sadness of their previous encounters. "Tell me what you're remembering," Amara encouraged, once they were settled. Luke opened the notebook, his large hands surprisingly delicate with the pages. "It comes in pieces," he said, "like watching a movie through a broken screen." He closed his eyes, concentrating. "There's a motorcycle. I can hear the engine roaring, feel the vibration under me. I'm on a desert road, somewhere hot. The sun beats down on leather." He paused, his face tightening. "Then there's violence, fighting, but I can't place when or where or why." Amara watched his expression carefully, noting the distress in his features. Take it slow, she said. We don't have to rush anything. The sound of shuffling footsteps made them both look up. Mr. Harlan, one of the library's regular patrons, had entered the reading area. The elderly veteran usually greeted Amara with a warm smile, but today he stood frozen, his face pale as though he'd seen a ghost. "Saint?" he whispered. "Saint Lawson?" Luke stiffened beside Amara, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "I'm sorry, sir," he said carefully. "You must have me confused with someone else." Mr. Harlan shook his head, taking an unsteady step forward. No mistake. You're St. Lawson. Everyone thought you were dead after that night at Devil's Pass." He trailed off, seeming to notice Luke's blank expression. "You don't remember, do you?" "Mr. Harlan," Amara intervened, seeing Luke's growing distress. "Luke has amnesia. He's just starting to recover his memories." The elderly man sank into a nearby chair, still staring at Luke. "Well, I'll be damned. You were with the Angels, the Hells Angels, one of their top men in the region until—" He hesitated, glancing between Luke and Amara. "Until what?" Luke's voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Harlan shifted uncomfortably. "There were rumors about you trying to expose something within the gang, something bad. Next thing anyone knew, you'd disappeared. Most folks assumed you were dead." Luke pushed back from the table abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. His breathing had become rapid, shallow. I was one of them? A gang member?" Amara reached for his arm, but he flinched away. "Luke, please!" "No," he said, his voice breaking. "What if I was dangerous? What if I hurt people? What if I'm still—" He cut himself off, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "Let's go outside," Amara suggested gently. "Get some fresh air." Luke nodded jerkily, allowing her to guide him towards the back door. Mr. Harlan watched them go, concern etched in his weathered features. In the small garden behind the library, Amara led Luke to a bench beneath an old oak tree. They sat in silence for several minutes, listening to the rustle of leaves above them. "I don't want to be that person," Luke finally said, his voice raw. "The kind of man who belongs to a violent gang." "Mr. Harlan said you were trying to expose something wrong," Amara reminded him. "That sounds like someone trying to do the right thing." Luke turned to look at her, his eyes full of pain and uncertainty. "Being near you, it feels like stepping out of darkness, like finding a light I didn't know I was searching for. What if remembering ruins that?" "We'll face it together," Amara assured him, though her own heart was heavy with worry. "Whatever you remember, whatever you discover about your past, you're not alone anymore." As the sun began to set, Amara walked Luke to the street, making sure he was steady enough to make his way back to the shelter. She returned to close up the library, her mind whirling with the day's revelations. It wasn't until she was doing her final security check that she noticed it, a folded piece of paper that had been slipped under the back door. With trembling fingers, she opened it, her blood running cold as she read the message. "If he remembers, he dies. If you help him remember, you die too." The paper slipped from her numb fingers, floating to the floor in the empty library as the weight of their situation crashed over her. Amara barely slept that night. The threatening note's words kept flashing through her mind as she tossed and turned in her small apartment. Her mother's picture sat on the nightstand, and Amara found herself staring at it in the dim light from the street lamps outside. "What would you do, Mom?" she whispered into the darkness. Her mother had always taught her that true kindness meant helping others even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "The right choice isn't always the easy one," she used to say, while volunteering at homeless shelters or bringing meals to sick neighbors. As dawn broke, Amara made her decision. She couldn't abandon Luke, not when he was finally starting to remember who he was. The thought of him facing this alone made her chest ache. When she arrived at the library early that morning, Luke was already waiting. Outside, his notebook clutched in his hands. The sight of him, looking lost but determined, strengthened her resolve. "Good morning," he said softly, standing as she approached. Inside the library's quiet confines, Amara pulled the threatening note from her bag with shaking hands. "Luke, I need to show you something." His face darkened as he read the words. "Amara," he breathed, "you shouldn't be involved in this. It's too dangerous." "I'm already involved," she said firmly, "and I'm not going anywhere." Luke's eyes filled with emotion. "Why? Why would you risk yourself for me?" "Because it's the right thing to do," she answered simply, "and because I believe in you." After a long moment of silence, Luke nodded. "Then we need help. Professional help." Officer Daniel Bradshaw's office at the local police station was cramped but neat. The detective listened intently as they explained the situation, his weathered face growing more serious with each detail. "The Hells Angels aren't just some rowdy bikers," Bradshaw warned, leaning forward in his chair. "They're organized, dangerous, and they have a long memory. If they're watching you, Mr. Lawson, it's for a reason." "But why?" Luke asked, frustration evident in his voice. "What did I know that was worth erasing my memory over?" As if triggered by the question, Luke suddenly grabbed the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white. His eyes went distant, seeing something neither Amara nor Officer Bradshaw could see. "Luke?" Amara touched his arm gently. "What do you remember?" "A meeting," he said through clenched teeth. "In an old warehouse. I trusted him, my second in command. But he was working with someone else. They were talking about—" He shook his head, the memory slipping away. "It's gone. But I remember the feeling of betrayal. It was like a knife in my gut." Officer Bradshaw made some notes. "This could be valuable information, Mr. Lawson, but it also makes you both targets. I strongly suggest you consider protective custody." "No," Luke said firmly. "I won't hide. I need to remember." They left the police station into the busy afternoon crowd. The streets were filled with shoppers and office workers on their lunch breaks, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Are you sure about this?" she asked Luke as they walked. Officer Bradshaw seemed really worried. "I'm sure about one thing," Luke replied, his voice steady. "Whatever I was trying to expose, it was important enough to die for, which means it's important enough to remember." Later that evening, as Amara prepared to close the library, she found Luke sitting on the front steps, waiting for her. The setting sun cast long shadows across his face, highlighting the determination that had replaced his earlier confusion. "You don't have to wait for me," she said, locking the heavy doors. "Yes, I do," he answered, standing. "I need to thank you, Amara. You could have walked away when things got dangerous. Most people would have, but you didn't." She turned to face him, seeing the genuine gratitude in his eyes. "My mom always said that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're scared." "Your mom sounds wise," Luke smiled softly. "She was," Amara agreed, feeling the familiar pang of loss. "She passed away last year, but her lessons stuck with me." They began walking down the street together, the evening crowds thinning around them. The streetlights flickered on one by one, creating pools of light in the growing darkness. Neither noticed the shadows that moved in their wake, or the distant rumble of motorcycle engines. "Whatever happens," Luke said as they walked, "I want you to know that you've given me something I thought was lost forever. Hope." Amara smiled, pushing away her lingering fear. They would face whatever came next together, one memory at a time. The street bustle continued around them as they made their way through the cooling evening air, unaware of the watchful eyes tracking their every move from the deepening shadows. Over the next several days, Amara developed a careful routine with Luke that felt both purposeful and protective. Each morning, she would arrive at the library early, finding him already waiting by the entrance with his notebook in hand. His eyes would light up at the sight of her, a small but meaningful change from the hollow confusion she'd first encountered months ago. "Good morning," he'd say, his voice growing more confident with each passing day. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of recognition. He remembered her now, consistently and clearly. They started each session with what Amara called memory mapping. Sitting at different tables each day to avoid creating patterns, they would work through various exercises designed to spark recall. Sometimes they used old newspapers, sometimes photographs from library archives, and sometimes just quiet conversation. "Tell me what you're feeling right now," Amara would prompt gently, watching Luke's face for signs of distress or breakthrough. On Tuesday morning, while looking at a motorcycle magazine, Luke suddenly smiled. "I remember the wind," he said softly. "The feeling of freedom on open roads, the sun on my face." His expression turned wistful. "It wasn't all bad, was it? Being on a bike?" "I don't think anything in life is all good or all bad," Amara replied thoughtfully. "Even difficult memories can hold beautiful moments." To avoid making themselves easy targets, they switched locations in the afternoons, meeting at the community center across town. The change of scenery seemed to help Luke's memory process, as if each new environment unlocked different pieces of his past. During one afternoon session, Luke remembered his childhood dog, a scraggly mutt named Buddy, who used to wait for him after school. He was brown and white, Luke recalled, his voice thick with emotion. He'd sit by the fence, every day at 3 o'clock sharp, never missed a day for 8 years. Amara watched as he wrote these details in his notebook, noting how his handwriting had improved from shaky scrawls to steady letters. "That's wonderful, Luke. These personal memories are just as important as the bigger ones we're trying to uncover." As they worked together, Amara found herself sharing more of her own life, too. It wasn't planned. It just felt natural, like a balance to all Luke was revealing about himself. One quiet afternoon, she told him about her mother. "She loved poetry," Amara said, running her finger along the spine of a worn book. "She used to read to me every night, even when I was way too old for bedtime stories. When she got sick," her voice caught, "I read to her instead." Luke reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. "How long has it been?" 1 year, 2 months, and 15 days, Amara answered, the precision of her count revealing the depth of her loss. "Sometimes I still pick up the phone to call her." "Thank you," Luke said quietly. "For what?" "For showing me I'm not the only one carrying heavy memories." Their days fell into a rhythm, mornings at the library, afternoons at the community center, and early evenings walking together through different routes in the city. They talked about favorite foods. Luke remembered loving spicy Thai dishes. Childhood dreams. Amara had wanted to be an astronaut, and small victories in Luke's recovery. One particularly meaningful breakthrough came on Thursday evening. After their session, Luke insisted on walking Amara to her apartment building, as he'd started doing regularly. As they approached, he suddenly stopped. "Your building number," he said, pointing. "It's 342. Amara's eyes widened. "I never told you that." "No," Luke agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I remembered it on my own, from yesterday." The joy of this small victory lit up both their faces. It wasn't just about remembering a number. It was proof that his mind could form and retain new memories, that healing was possible. "This is huge, Luke," Amara exclaimed, impulsively hugging him. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his arms coming around her briefly. "Thank you," he murmured, "for not giving up on me." After saying goodnight, Luke turned toward the shelter where he stayed, his steps lighter than they'd been in days. The breakthrough with the building number had given him hope, real, tangible hope, that his memories could fully return. What he didn't notice as he walked through the darkening streets was the shadow that detached itself from a doorway and began following at a careful distance. The figure moved silently, keeping pace with Luke's steady steps, watching his every move with calculated interest. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Luke burst through the library doors, his face ashen and hands trembling. Amara, who had been arranging new arrivals on the cart, immediately abandoned her task and rushed to his side. "Luke, what's wrong?" He gripped the edge of the nearest table, his knuckles white. I remember." His breathing came in short, sharp gasps. "There was a woman screaming, so much screaming." Amara guided him to their usual quiet corner, away from the few early morning patrons. She pulled out a chair and helped him sit, noting how his broad shoulders shook beneath his worn jacket. "Take deep breaths," she instructed softly. "You're safe here." Luke pressed his palms against his eyes. "There was a group of them, bikers, and this young girl." His voice cracked. "They were threatening her. I could see their faces, hear their voices, but it cuts off. Just stops, like watching a movie that suddenly goes dark." Amara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "These memories coming back, even the difficult ones, they're signs of healing, Luke. Your mind is trying to tell you something important. But what if I don't want to know?" He looked up at her, his eyes haunted. "What if I was one of them? What if I—" "No," Amara said firmly. "The man I've come to know these past months wouldn't hurt anyone. Whatever you're remembering, I believe you were trying to help." The morning progressed slowly as Luke worked through his turbulent emotions. Amara stayed close, offering quiet support while maintaining their regular routine of reading and memory exercises. By afternoon, the library had filled with its usual crowd: students, elderly readers, and business people on lunch breaks. Luke was absorbed in a local history book when he suddenly tensed. Amara followed his gaze to two young men in hoodies, huddled over a computer terminal near the reference section. "Swear it's him," one whispered, not quite quietly enough. "The guy who came back from the dead." "St. Lawson? No way, man. They said he was—" Luke's face drained of color. Without a word, Amara pulled out her phone and texted Officer Bradshaw. Within 20 minutes, the detective arrived, his presence casual but alert as he approached their table. "Time for a change of scenery?" Bradshaw said quietly. "We've got a community room set up at the station. Private, secured, and a lot safer than here right now." They gathered their materials quickly and followed Bradshaw through the back exit to his unmarked car. The drive to the police station was tense, with Luke checking the mirrors repeatedly for any signs of pursuit. The community room was simple but comfortable: a conference table, some chairs, and large windows overlooking a small courtyard. Officer Bradshaw positioned himself outside while Amara and Luke settled in. "Something about earlier?" Luke said after a while. "Hearing those guys talk about me coming back from the dead, it triggered something else." He closed his eyes, concentrating. "I remember gravel. Cold, rough gravel against my face, and blood, my blood." Amara leaned forward, her heart aching at the pain in his voice. "There was gunfire," he continued. "So much noise. Bikes revving, shots. His hands clenched into fists. And then, God, I remember this face. Someone I knew, someone I trusted. They had a gun pointed right at me. A betrayal, Amara said softly. Luke nodded, swallowing hard. They wanted me dead, but why? What did I know that was worth killing for? They worked through the afternoon, piecing together fragments of memory like a jigsaw puzzle, missing most of its pieces. Officer Bradshaw checked in periodically, bringing coffee and updates on increased patrols around both the library and shelter. As evening approached, Bradshaw pulled Amara aside. We've had reports of suspicious vehicles circling the shelter. 2 motorcycles, a black SUV. I don't like it. Amara glanced at Luke, who was writing in his notebook. He can't go back there. Agreed, but we can't hold him here without cause, and safe houses take time to arrange. I'll drive him somewhere else tonight, Amara decided. Maybe a motel outside of town. The sun was setting when they left the station, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. Amara's small blue sedan felt impossibly vulnerable as they drove through darkening streets, but she maintained a steady speed to avoid drawing attention. You don't have to do this, Luke said quietly. Yes, I do. Amara checked her mirrors for the 10th time. Besides, what kind of librarian would I be if I abandoned my favorite patron? The attempt at humor drew a small smile from Luke, but it faded quickly. I'm putting you in danger. You're my friend, Amara replied simply, and friends help each other. They drove in silence for a while, both aware of the weight of unspoken fears hanging between them. The streets grew quieter as they left the downtown area, passing through residential neighborhoods toward the outskirts of town. Finally, Amara pulled into the parking lot of a modest but clean-looking motel. The neon vacancy sign buzzed softly in the growing darkness. She handed Luke enough cash for 2 nights. I'll pick you up in the morning, she said. Text me when you're settled in. And Luke? She caught his eye. Be careful. He nodded, his hand lingering on the car door. You too, Amara. Watch your back. She waited until he'd checked in, and she saw a light go on in a second-floor room before pulling away. In her rearview mirror, she could make out his silhouette at the window, watching her drive off into the night. The sense of danger that had been building all day felt palpable now, as if the very shadows held threats waiting to emerge. The next week settled into a cautious rhythm. Luke and Amara met daily, moving between the library, community center, and various quiet cafes to avoid establishing patterns. With each passing day, Luke's memories surfaced more readily in Amara's presence, as if her gentle voice and patient demeanor were keys unlocking long-sealed doors in his mind. It's like your presence grounds me, Luke explained one morning as they sat in a corner of the library's reference section. Makes the memories feel less scary somehow. Amara smiled, arranging their usual collection of notebooks and history books. Maybe because you know you're safe here. They worked steadily through the morning, documenting each fragment of memory as it emerged. Luke's hand, once uncertain with the pen, now moved with growing confidence across the pages. Shortly after lunch, something changed. Luke's posture stiffened suddenly, his pen clattering to the table. Oh God, he whispered, face draining of color. I remember why they wanted me dead. Amara leaned forward, keeping her voice low and steady. Take it slow. What do you see? Weapons, so many weapons. His hands trembled as he spoke. I was part of it at first, helping move shipments, never asking questions. But then I started noticing patterns, the violence spreading through neighborhoods, innocent people getting caught in the crossfire. He pressed his palms against his eyes, shoulders shaking. I was going to testify. Had evidence gathered, Contacts in law enforcement ready. But they found out somehow. The night they ambushed me. Tears slid down his cheeks as the full weight of memory crashed over him. All those months I was silent, not by choice, but still silent. How many more people got hurt because I couldn't remember? How many died because I failed? Hey. Amara reached across the table, gently pulling his hands away from his face. Look at me, Luke. You didn't fail. You tried to do the right thing, and they tried to kill you for it. But you survived. You're remembering now. That's not failure. That's a second chance. To what? Fix the damage I helped cause? To finish what you started, Amara said firmly. To be the man you were trying to become when they tried to stop you. That courage didn't die with your memories, Luke. I've seen it every day in the way you keep pushing forward, even when you're scared. Over the next several days, Luke threw himself into helping around the library, as if trying to balance the scales of his past through small acts of kindness. He carried books for elderly patrons, fixed wobbly shelves with quiet competence, and began reading aloud to the children during afternoon story time. Mrs. Martinez, a regular patron in her 70s, started calling him our gentle giant. Mr. Harlan, the veteran who had first recognized him, now greeted him warmly as Saint. But the old nickname carried new meaning, earned through present actions rather than past reputation. You're good with them, Amara observed one afternoon, watching Luke help Mr. Peterson navigate the library's new computer system. Natural caretaker. Luke shrugged, but she caught his small smile. Feels right, you know, using my strength to help instead of hurt. That evening, during their usual memory session, Luke suddenly grabbed Amara's hand. Your voice, he said. I remember your voice from that night. What do you mean? When they attacked me, I was lying there, everything going dark. But I heard someone talking. Must have been you, walking home from a late shift. That's why they ran. They couldn't risk witnesses. Amara felt a chill run down her spine, remembering that night. She had been on the phone with her mother, discussing weekend plans. If she had left even 5 minutes later. Let me buy you dinner, Luke said suddenly, to thank you. For everything. They found a small diner a few blocks from the library, warm and quiet with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh coffee. Over plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, they talked about simple things. Favorite books, childhood memories, hopes for the future. For the first time since Luke's memories began returning, the weight of the past felt lighter. I like who I am when I'm with you, Luke admitted softly. Like maybe I can be more than what they tried to make me. You already are, Amara replied. The evening felt peaceful, almost normal, as they finished their meal. Luke insisted on walking Amara partway home, making sure she was safely on her usual route before heading back to his motel room. Amara walked the remaining blocks to her apartment, humming quietly under the warm glow of streetlights. The night air was cool and sweet with the scent of blooming jasmine. She felt oddly light, as if the connection growing between her and Luke had lifted some of her own loneliness. The screech of tires shattered the quiet. Before Amara could turn, strong hands grabbed her from behind. She tried to scream, but a gloved hand clamped over her mouth as masked figures dragged her toward a waiting van. Her last conscious thought was of Luke, and the look of peace in his eyes at dinner, before everything went black. Luke paced his motel room, checking his phone for the 100th time. No response from Amara to his evening text thanking her for dinner. She always replied, usually within minutes. Something felt wrong. Deeply, terrifyingly wrong. His hands trembled as he dialed her number again. Straight to voicemail. This isn't like you, he whispered, grabbing his jacket and rushing out into the night. The street seemed darker than usual as he ran toward the library, his footsteps echoing off brick buildings. Memories of violence and betrayal flashed through his mind, each one adding to his growing dread. He'd been foolish to think they could establish a normal routine, to believe his past wouldn't eventually catch up to them. As he rounded the corner to the library, his heart stopped. There, beneath a streetlight, lay Amara's familiar messenger bag and her reading glasses. The glasses were bent, one lens cracked. A piece of paper fluttered nearby, weighted down by a small rock. Luke's hands shook as he picked up the note. 5 words were scrawled in harsh black ink. "She remembers too much, for you." "No, no, no," he choked out, clutching Amara's belongings to his chest. His knees gave out, and he sank to the sidewalk. This was his fault, all his fault. He'd known the danger and still let her get close, still accepted her help, still allowed himself to care for her. With trembling fingers, he called Officer Bradshaw. "They have her," Luke said, his voice breaking. "The gang. They took Amara." Bradshaw arrived within minutes, lights flashing but sirens silent. He found Luke still kneeling on the sidewalk, holding Amara's glasses like they might shatter. "We'll organize a search immediately," Bradshaw said, already radioing for backup. "But Luke, I need everything you remember. Every detail could help us find her." Luke nodded, struggling to his feet. "I'll do better than that. I'll turn myself in, give you everything. Names, locations, every detail about the trafficking ring. Everything I couldn't remember before. It's all clear now." "Are you sure?" Bradshaw studied him carefully. "Once you start talking, there's no going back." "I don't care about going back," Luke said firmly. "I only care about getting her out safely. She's innocent in all this. She just tried to help me." At the police station, Luke poured out everything he remembered. The words came in a rush, as if his mind was finally ready to release all its dark secrets. He described the weapons smuggling operation, the key players, the routes they used. He named the senior members who had ordered his execution when he threatened to expose them. "The main warehouse is here," he said, marking a spot on the map Bradshaw spread out. "Remote location, easy to defend. Perfect for holding someone they want to keep quiet." Bradshaw nodded grimly. "We'll assemble a tactical team, but Luke, you need to stay here where it's safe." "No." Luke's voice was steel. "I'm going with you. I know their patterns, their backup plans, and—" He swallowed hard. "I need to be there, for her." After a long moment, Bradshaw agreed. "Stay close to me. Follow every order exactly. We do this by the book." Meanwhile, Amara was fighting her own battle with fear. She awoke with a pounding headache, zip ties cutting into her wrists behind a metal chair. The warehouse was dim, lit only by scattered work lights that cast long shadows between stacked crates and old machinery. "Stay calm," she told herself, remembering the breathing techniques she'd learned during anxiety attacks after her mother's death. In for 4 counts, hold for 7, out for 8. The steady rhythm helped clear her mind. Through half-closed eyes, she observed her surroundings. 5 men moved around the space, all wearing leather vests with familiar patches. One caught her attention, younger than the others, probably early 20s, with nervous hands and eyes that couldn't quite meet hers. When he passed near her chair, Amara spoke softly. "Could I have some water, please?" The young man startled, glancing at his companions before shaking his head. "It's okay," she said gently. "I understand you're following orders. My name is Amara. I work at the library, helping people find books. That's all I've ever done." She saw him swallow hard, saw the conflict in his features. "Shut up," one of the older bikers snapped, but Amara kept her eyes on the young man. You remind me of my friend Tommy. He comes to the library for computer help sometimes, trying to earn his GED. She kept her voice calm, conversational. He was scared at first too, thinking people would judge him, but everyone deserves a chance to choose their path. The young biker's hands clenched and unclenched. He took half a step toward her before another gang member grabbed his arm. "Don't let her get in your head, kid," the older man growled. "She's just trying to save herself." "I'm trying to remind you that I'm human," Amara corrected quietly. "Just like you. Just like your mothers, your sisters. Is this really who you want to be?" She saw doubt flicker across the young man's face, saw him glance uncertainly at his companions. Before anyone could respond, a faint sound caught their attention. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. The gang members tensed, reaching for weapons. But Amara allowed herself a small smile, hearing in those approaching sirens the answer to her prayers. Luke was coming. She just had to stay strong a little longer. The first rays of dawn painted the warehouse district in shades of gray and pink as police vehicles surrounded the aging building. Dew sparkled on rusted metal and cracked concrete, nature's small beauty contrasting with the tension hanging thick in the morning air. Luke stepped out of Officer Bradshaw's cruiser, adjusting the protective vest that felt both foreign and familiar against his chest. His hands remembered the weight, even if his mind still struggled with the memories. "I need to be part of the entry team," he insisted quietly, watching tactical units take position. "I know these men. I know how they think." Bradshaw studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Stay behind me. No heroics." Inside the warehouse, Amara continued her gentle conversation with the young biker who'd been assigned to guard her. The others had stepped outside to assess the police presence, leaving them in relative privacy. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He shifted uncomfortably. "Danny." "Danny," she repeated warmly. "How long have you been with them?" 8 months, he mumbled, then caught himself. "Stop trying to what? To see you as a person?" Amara's voice remained gentle. 8 months isn't very long. That means you still remember who you were before. The person your mother raised you to be. Danny's shoulders tensed. "You don't know anything about my mother." "I know she wouldn't want this life for you. Violence only breeds more violence, Danny. It's like a poison that spreads, hurting everyone it touches." Amara leaned forward slightly. "I can see the pain you're carrying. This isn't making it better, is it?" The young man's hands trembled as he looked away. "You don't understand." "Help me understand then," she encouraged. "Talk to me." Before Danny could respond, heavy boots announced the return of the other gang members. Their leader, a weathered man with hard eyes, stalked toward Amara. "Your friend Saint is out there," he spat. "Looks like he finally remembered enough to bring the cops down on us." Amara lifted her chin. "He remembered who he really is, the man who tried to stop you from hurting innocent people." The leader grabbed her chair, leaning close. "And look where that got him." He straightened, pulling out a phone. "Time to end this game." He barked demands into the phone, his voice echoing off metal walls. When he finished, he turned to his men with a cold smile. "Saint's coming in alone, or we show him exactly what happens to people who betray the Brotherhood." Amara's heart clenched, but she kept her expression calm. She noticed Danny's hands moving behind her, felt him working at her restraints, not removing them completely, but loosening them just enough. Minutes crawled by like hours until the warehouse door creaked open. Luke stepped inside, hands raised, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light. "I remember everything now," he said clearly, voice carrying across the space. "I remember who I was, who you were, and I remember why you tried to kill me." Should have finished the job, the leader growled. Maybe. Luke took another step forward. But then you wouldn't hear the truth about how I discovered you were trafficking young girls through the weapons pipeline, about how you betrayed everything the Brotherhood was supposed to stand for. Tension crackled through the air as Luke continued walking slowly forward. We were meant to be brothers, to protect each other, and those who couldn't protect themselves. When did we lose that? Brothers don't rat each other out, one of the older members snapped. Brothers don't sell children, Luke countered firmly. Brothers don't destroy lives for profit, and brothers don't shoot their own in the back. His eyes found Amara's, and his voice softened. But sometimes angels find us when we're lost. Sometimes they keep our souls alive when our brothers think we're dead. The leader's laugh was harsh. Still soft, Saint. Still weak. No, Luke shook his head. Strong enough to face what I've done. Strong enough to make it right. He spread his hands wider. Strong enough to give you all one chance to do the same. In that moment, several things happened at once. Danny yanked Amara's loosened restraints free, pushing her behind a stack of crates. The warehouse doors burst open as tactical teams swarmed in, voices shouting commands that echoed off metal walls. The gang members reached for weapons, but Luke's voice cut through the chaos. Don't! Remember who you were before all this. Remember your real brothers, your families. Don't add more blood to what's already on our hands. For one breathless moment, violence balanced on a knife's edge. Then, slowly, weapons lowered, hands raised. The leader's face twisted with rage, but even he recognized the futility of resistance as officers moved in to secure the scene. Amara emerged from behind the crates, her legs shaky but her spirit strong. She saw Danny being cuffed, his young face showing relief mixed with fear. When their eyes met, she gave him a gentle nod of acknowledgement. Officer Bradshaw coordinated the arrests with practiced efficiency, his team working quickly to secure the gang members and clear the warehouse. Not a single shot had been fired, a victory of words and conscience over violence. In the warehouse's aftermath, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows as paramedics swarmed the scene. Luke couldn't take his eyes off Amara as they draped an orange shock blanket around her shoulders. The moment the medic stepped away, he crossed the space between them in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. Amara crumpled against his chest, her composure finally breaking. Tears soaked into his shirt as she clung to him, her whole body trembling. I was so scared, she whispered, not just for me, but for you coming in there alone. I had to. Luke's voice was rough with emotion. The thought of them hurting you because of me. He held her tighter, one hand cradling the back of her head. I couldn't let that happen. You gave me back my life, my memories. You gave me hope when I was lost. A paramedic gently interrupted to check Amara's wrists, where the restraints had left angry red marks. As they applied antiseptic and gauze, Officer Bradshaw approached with purposeful steps. The gang leaders are in custody, he reported, his usual stern expression softened by satisfaction. Your testimony is solid gold, Luke. We're looking at multiple federal charges: weapons trafficking, kidnapping, attempted murder. They won't see daylight for a long time. Luke nodded solemnly. Good. There's something else, Bradshaw continued. Given the scope of your testimony and the organizations involved, we need to get you into witness protection. There's a rehabilitation program specifically designed for cases like yours. It'll help you transition while keeping you safe. Amara's hand tightened in Luke's, but she stayed silent, understanding the necessity, even as her heart ached at the thought of separation. Later that evening, with 2 police cruisers parked outside for security, Amara unlocked her apartment door with Luke by her side. The familiar comfort of her home helped ease some of the day's tension from her shoulders. "Let me make us dinner," she said softly. "We both need to eat something." Luke followed her to the small kitchen, watching as she moved through the familiar motions of cooking. The simple domestic scene felt surreal after the intensity of the warehouse, yet somehow more real than anything he'd experienced since waking up without his memories. "I remember who I was now," he said, as Amara stirred a pot of pasta. "All of it, the good and the bad. But you know what's strange? I'm not afraid of that man anymore." Amara turned to face him, wooden spoon still in hand. "No? No?" Luke's eyes met hers steadily. "The only thing that scares me now is the thought of losing you. You saw something in me worth saving when I couldn't even remember my own name. You risked everything to help me find myself again." "I saw your heart," Amara replied simply. "Even without your memories, it was always good." They ate at her small kitchen table, the police lights outside painting occasional blue streaks across the walls. As night settled over the city, they both knew their time together was growing short. "You should enter the program," Amara said finally, gathering their empty plates. "It's the safest option, and you deserve the chance to heal completely." "I know." Luke helped her load the dishwasher, their movements in sync despite everything. "But I don't want to lose this, us." Amara turned to him with determined eyes. "You won't. I'll visit every time they allow it. I'll be here, holding space for you until you're ready to come back." When the time came, Luke walked to the waiting police vehicle with heavy steps. Through the window, he watched Amara standing on her porch, her hand on the light switch. As the car pulled away, the warm yellow glow of her porch light cut through the darkness like a beacon of hope, promising guidance home just as she had done since the day he first walked into her library. Time flowed like the gentle river beside the rehabilitation center where Luke worked to rebuild himself piece by piece. Each day brought new challenges and victories as he participated in therapy sessions, cooperative meetings with federal prosecutors, and structured rehabilitation programs designed to help him fully recover his sense of self. Amara's weekly visits became the brightest spots in his journey. Every Wednesday, she would arrive with a canvas bag full of treasures, home-cooked meals still warm in their containers, carefully selected books, and handwritten notes from the seniors at the library who missed their gentle giant. "Mr. Harlan asked about you again," she said one afternoon, spreading out containers of chicken soup and fresh bread. "He says the history section isn't the same without you helping him reach the top shelves." Luke's eyes crinkled with warmth. "Tell him I'm practicing my reading every day. Maybe soon I can help him research that World War II project he mentioned." Between visits, Luke discovered a new purpose. He began mentoring younger men in the program, many of whom reminded him of his own past. In the center's small library, he taught basic reading skills with the patience Amara had shown him. "Violence feels strong," he would tell them, "but real strength is choosing kindness when the world expects darkness from you." As weeks turned to months, Luke and Amara's connection deepened into something profound. Their shared trauma and healing created an unshakable foundation of trust. Their conversations grew richer, filled with dreams of the future and gratitude for their present. On a crisp autumn morning, after months of progress, Luke was granted a supervised outing. He chose the Riverside Park where he had once wandered in confusion, afraid of his own shadow. Now, walking beside Amara with steady steps, he felt the difference in his soul. "I remember being so lost here," he said, his hand finding hers as they strolled along the water's edge. Every step felt uncertain. But now... He paused, turning to face her. "Now I know exactly who I am and where I'm going." Amara squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with understanding. "And where is that?" toward a future with you," Luke replied softly. "You gave me back my memories, but more importantly, you gave me hope when I had none. I want to build a life where I never forget that gift, where I never forget you." The river flowed peacefully beside them, its waters reflecting the golden autumn light, just as it had on countless days before. But now, instead of confusion and fear, it witnessed two hearts beating in sync, stronger for having weathered the storm together. The summer breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine through the community center's open windows. Luke stood at the whiteboard, his confident strokes forming letters as he guided his adult literacy class through their daily lesson. 1 year had passed since his release from the rehabilitation program, and his new role as a literacy mentor filled his days with purpose. "Remember," he said warmly to his students, "just like someone once taught me, there's no shame in taking your time with the words. They'll wait for you." After class, Luke gathered his teaching materials, his movements steady and sure. The confusion and hesitation that had once marked his every action were long gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that drew people to him. His students often commented on his patience, never knowing that he had once been the one struggling to write his own name. Across town, at the Riverside Public Library, Amara sat in her new office, the nameplate on her desk reading "Program Director" in elegant script. She was reviewing plans for upcoming community events when her phone buzzed with a message from Luke. "Ready for tonight?" She smiled, remembering how far they'd come from those first uncertain days when he couldn't remember seeing her before. Now, every memory they shared was precious and clear in both their minds. The community center's largest meeting room had been transformed for the evening's celebration. Streamers hung from the ceiling, and tables were arranged in a welcoming circle. Mr. Harlan, the veteran who had first recognized Luke, helped arrange chairs while sharing stories about his own homecoming decades ago. Mrs. Chen bustled about, setting out homemade treats. "1 year of memories," she said proudly, patting Luke's arm as he helped her with a heavy tray. "And such good ones we've made together." Officer Bradshaw arrived in casual clothes, looking relaxed and satisfied. He'd become a regular friend to both Luke and Amara, stopping by the library and community center to check on their progress. "Who would have thought," he said, clapping Luke on the shoulder, "that the man I once worried about would become one of our community's strongest advocates?" The gathering was intimate, but filled with warmth. Senior patrons from the library shared stories about Luke's kindness, how he always carried their heavy books, fixed wobbly chairs, and read to those whose eyes were failing. Each tale highlighted not just his physical strength, but the gentle heart that had emerged fully through his healing. "I remember when you first came to the library," one elderly woman said, her eyes twinkling. "So lost, so polite. Now look at you, helping others find their way." Luke stood before the group, his voice steady as he addressed them. 1 year ago, I finally remembered everything about my past. But what matters more is what I've learned since then, that redemption isn't just about making up for mistakes. It's about choosing to be better every single day." He looked at Amara, who sat beaming with pride. "And sometimes it takes someone believing in you before you can believe in yourself." As the evening drew to a close, Luke and Amara walked together under the warm streetlights. The summer night wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket, cricket songs providing gentle accompaniment to their footsteps. "Thank you," Luke said softly as they approached her house, "for refusing to give up on me, even when it put you in danger, for seeing the man I could become when I couldn't remember who I was." They settled onto her porch steps, the familiar glow of her porch light casting a gentle warmth over them. It was the same light she'd kept burning for him all those months ago, a beacon of hope and safety. Amara leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You know what's funny?" she mused, watching fireflies dance in her front yard. I started out thinking I was just helping someone in need, like my mother always taught me to do. She turned to look at him, her eyes soft with emotion. I helped him every day, but he changed my life forever. The porch light continued to shine above them, no longer a signal of safety in darkness, but a warm glow illuminating their shared future, one built on hope, love, and the profound power of redemption. Luke smiled, understanding perfectly how grace could transform not just the receiver, but the giver as well. Together they sat in peaceful silence, their journey from stranger to savior to soulmate complete, yet their story continuing to unfold with each cherished moment they shared. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, don't forget to subscribe. I post daily, and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.